I remember walking into that room and feeling like I was floating just a little above the ground. The soft glow of fairy lights draped across the ceiling, the smell of fresh flowers mingling with the subtle scent of champagne, and the hum of laughter and conversation. It all felt surreal. My friends and colleagues were clustered around, raising glasses and smiling, and for a moment, I let myself sink fully into that pride. I'd earned this promotion. Every late night, every skipped weekend, every time I stayed behind while the office emptied out, it all led here. I felt the weight of every sacrifice and every small victory, and it wrapped around me like a warm blanket. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message of congratulations popped up, and I smiled, thumb hovering over the screen as I read the words. A part of me wanted to freeze this moment forever. The clinking of glasses, the hum of music, the way my reflection shimmered in the polished surfaces of the room. And yet, beneath all that joy, there was a quiet tug of unease. I knew my family would be arriving soon. Nothing had happened yet, but I could already sense that invisible tension, like a shadow waiting at the edges of the celebration. Still, for those first few minutes, I allowed myself to be fully present, letting the pride wash over me, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to arrive. The doorbell rang, and just like that, the mood shifted. My heart did a little flip as I saw them step inside. Mom, with her perfectly coiffed hair and that sharp, calculating smile that could charm anyone, and my sister trailing behind, her eyes scanning the room as if she owned it. They didn't just enter, they arrived. With an energy that changed the air, Mom's hands immediately went to adjusting the decorations, rearranging things just so, and I could hear the subtle sighs she thought no one noticed. My sister, on the other hand, drifted toward the gift table, her gaze flicking to the cash envelope I had proudly set aside for a small token of gratitude, my little celebration of this milestone. I tried to keep my smile steady, greeting them warmly, but inside, there was a flicker of tension I couldn't ignore. I had always loved my family, always wanted to make them proud, but I knew the expectations that came with Mom's approval and my sister's ever-present entitlement. There was an unspoken weight behind her glances, a quiet calculation in her smile, and I could feel the beginnings of a storm brewing beneath the surface. And yet, for now, we exchanged pleasantries, laughter forced just enough to blend in with the party. I told myself I could manage it, that this night was still mine, that nothing could taint the sense of accomplishment I'd worked so hard to achieve. But as I poured a drink and tried to laugh at a colleague's joke, I couldn't shake the feeling that the celebration was teetering on the edge of something much less celebratory. It started small, almost like a whisper in the middle of the laughter. My sister, leaning casually against the edge of the dessert table, let it slip. "So, about that $100,000 bonus," she said, her voice light, almost teasing, but the way she said it made the words land like a stone in my chest. For a split second, I froze, my hand hovering over my glass, the clink of ice sounding impossibly loud in the sudden silence my brain created. Did I hear her right? $100,000. Just like that. My mind raced, fumbling through every possible scenario. Was she joking? Was this some strange test? I could feel Mom's eyes flick to me, a small crease forming between her brows, and my stomach twisted. I had seen this before. The subtle way she could make a room bend toward her desires, the unspoken expectation that I would always give in. Flashbacks hit me all at once. Birthday gifts I had saved for months to buy, projects I had pushed myself to finish late nights for. All those times I'd quietly carried the weight of family expectations without complaint. And now this, my sister just dropping the idea of taking a massive slice of my hard-earned reward. I forced a laugh, trying to mask the tight knot in my chest, and said something vague about company rules. She tilted her head, smirk barely hidden, and that was enough to make my pulse speed. There it was, the first unmistakable crack in what I thought was a perfect celebration. A chill ran through me, and I realized the party had shifted. It wasn't just about me anymore. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. I don't think that's really possible," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "The bonus is part of my company's plan, and it's meant for personal achievement. I can't just give it away." I watched her face, expecting maybe a laugh or a roll of the eyes, but what I got instead was a flash of disappointment, and then Mom stepped in. She placed a hand lightly on my sister's arm, a gesture that should have been comforting, but in that moment felt like a subtle accusation, directed at me. "Honey," Mom said, her voice soft but firm, "we've all worked hard. Families support each other. She deserves it. You know that." My chest tightened. I could hear the edges of my calm starting to fray, the polite explanation I was giving, feeling weaker and smaller than the storm gathering around me. Flashbacks crept in uninvited. Childhood dinners where Mom had always taken my side lightly, until suddenly the scales tipped in favor of my sister, times when fairness seemed negotiable, and I was left silently absorbing the imbalance. I smiled politely, nodding, trying to keep the mood intact, but inside, frustration was bubbling, an unfamiliar heat that made my stomach churn. The room felt smaller now, the laughter and music distant, replaced by a quiet, pressing tension. I felt trapped between wanting to honor my own boundaries and the fear of disappointing the people I loved most. I wanted to be fair, I wanted to be kind, but the line between generosity and self-erasure was starting to blur. And in that moment, I realized I was standing on a precipice, one polite refusal away from a confrontation I wasn't sure I was ready for. The air in the room had thickened, though no one else seemed to notice it. My sister's voice sharpened, just a touch, as she leaned closer. "Come on, you know it's the right thing to do," she said, that sly smile hiding an edge I couldn't ignore. I felt my chest tighten, the laughter around us blurring into a low hum, almost like background noise to the argument I hadn't wanted to have. And then Mom's tone changed, just slightly, but enough to make my stomach twist. "Think about the family, honey. You've been so lucky. Don't you want to share that luck with your sister?" I could feel the pressure building, like a storm that started as a distant rumble and was now right overhead. My mind flashed back to all the times I had sacrificed for them, covering rent when money was tight, picking up extra shifts just so my sister could chase her hobbies, giving up personal plans without complaint. And yet here I was, being told that even my hard-earned reward wasn't mine to keep. Frustration rose, a hot knot in my throat that I tried to swallow down. I wanted to explain, to make them see, to make them understand that boundaries weren't betrayal. But words felt small, inadequate. The laughter, the glasses, the music, all of it seemed irrelevant now, fading as my focus narrowed to the impossible task of standing my ground against the people I loved. I clenched my fists lightly, feeling the edge of my patience fray. Every polite refusal I had given earlier seemed wasted, every effort to keep the party light now hanging by a thread. The room wasn't just tense anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable crack that would split the celebration apart. And then it happened. Time slowed in a way that made everything feel surreal. Mom's hand came up, sharp and sudden, and the smack landed across my cheek before I could even react. The sound echoed in my ears, louder than any music or laughter that had filled the room just moments ago. My body went rigid, shock freezing me mid-step, and for a heartbeat, I couldn't process what had just happened. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting, the warmth spreading beneath my fingers, and my mind spun. How could she? Over money? Over a bonus I had worked so hard for? The room seemed to tilt, guests frozen, glasses trembling in their hands. I saw their faces, surprise, confusion, some horror, but mostly a blur, like I was watching everything through a thick fog. My sister's smirk lingered, small and infuriating, and I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but words caught in my throat. Flashbacks came in sharp bursts. Childhood arguments, the subtle favoritism, the countless times I had tried to do the right thing, only to feel unseen, unheard, unvalued. And now this, physical, undeniable, a line crossed in front of everyone I knew. My heart pounded, chest tightening, and a wave of betrayal washed over me, a bitter, cold realization that nothing, not even this milestone, not even my own achievements, was enough to keep my family from fracturing me. I stepped back, almost staggering, my mind blank and spinning with disbelief. For the first time, the celebration, the pride, the achievement, it all felt meaningless in the face of raw, shocking betrayal. I didn't speak for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was probably only minutes. I drifted to the edge of the party, leaning against the hallway wall, my back pressing into the cool plaster as if grounding myself could somehow steady the storm inside. The laughter and clinking glasses from the main room felt distant, muffled, like a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. My cheek throbbed, a dull reminder of the slap, but it wasn't the physical pain that cut the deepest. It was the shock, the hurt, the betrayal. I felt hollow, like I had been emptied of all the pride and joy I had carried in just a few hours. Flashbacks of my childhood ran unbidden through my mind. Evenings where mom's disapproval had stung more than any punishment. Moments where my sister's needs always came first, and I had quietly swallowed my own feelings just to keep the peace. The weight of it all pressed down on me now, heavier than any promotion, any bonus, any recognition I had ever earned. I could feel the walls of the hallway closing in, and yet, paradoxically, I wanted to disappear into them. My phone buzzed, again with congratulations messages, but they felt foreign, distant, irrelevant. The celebration I had dreamed of, meticulously planned in my mind for months, had dissolved into a strange, silent void. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to will away the sting, the shock, the overwhelming numbness that left me unsure whether I wanted to go back out or run far, far away. The party had ended for me. Even though the music and chatter went on, a line had been crossed, and the world I thought I knew felt fractured in ways I wasn't yet ready to face. I couldn't stay silent forever. The numbness dulled after a while, replaced by a simmering anger I couldn't ignore. Later that night, after the guests had left and the room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, I found Mom in the kitchen, sipping tea like nothing had happened. My chest felt tight, my hands slightly trembling, but I forced myself to speak. "Mom, what you did back there, it was wrong. That slap, it hurt me in more ways than you probably realize." Her eyes widened briefly, then softened, like she expected me to apologize for even mentioning it. I swallowed hard, my voice catching, and continued. "I've spent my life trying to be fair, to do right by this family. But that doesn't mean I should erase myself or hand over everything I've worked for just because someone demands it." I could see her bristle, the tension in her jaw, and I felt a surge of courage. I will no longer let money or guilt or favoritism control what I deserve. That bonus, my promotion, they're mine. I earned them, and I refuse to apologize for standing my ground. Flashbacks ran through me. Years of bending, of swallowing my feelings, of silently watching my sister get her way while I stayed quiet. But now, I felt a strange clarity, a raw determination. Mom opened her mouth, but I didn't let her interrupt. This was my moment to be seen, to set a boundary I should have set long ago. The room felt small, the night air heavy with tension, yet for the first time, I felt an inner weight lift just slightly. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't resolution yet, but it was my voice, unflinching and real, cutting through the pattern of years of submission. The days after the party were quiet, almost unervingly so. I found myself replaying the events over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Sitting alone in my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside my window, I traced the arc of my feelings, the shock, the numbness, the anger, and, slowly, a thread of understanding began to weave itself through the chaos. I realized that this wasn't just about a bonus or a slap. It was about patterns that had been running through my family for years, patterns I had tolerated silently, believing that love required compliance. Flashbacks surfaced, childhood birthdays where my accomplishments were overshadowed, moments when my needs were quietly dismissed, and the unspoken hierarchy that always seemed to place my sister's desires first. It stung to recognize it, but it also brought clarity. I had spent so long trying to be the good one, the one who kept the peace, the one who sacrificed without complaint, and in doing so, I had given up pieces of myself. Now, I understood that boundaries weren't betrayal, they were survival. I journaled late into the night, the pen scratching across paper as if it were clawing away the confusion and hurt. I walked the quiet streets, breathing in the crisp air, listening to my own thoughts without judgment. For the first time in years, I felt like I was reclaiming the parts of me that had been overshadowed, learning to separate love from obligation, affection from expectation. Reflection didn't erase the pain, but it gave it context, and that context allowed a flicker of strength to grow inside me. A quiet, steady flame that promised I could move forward without losing myself. Months passed, and slowly, the weight of that night began to lift, replaced by a quiet determination to live on my own terms. I redefined what it meant to love my family without losing myself. Boundaries became my shield, not a weapon. I focused on work, on small celebrations for myself, on savoring victories without guilt. I remembered that promotion party, the sting of betrayal, the ache of disappointment, and I let it teach me rather than define me. I started spending time in spaces that felt truly mine, walking in parks at sunset, making coffee for myself in the quiet mornings, feeling the sunlight spill across my desk. My relationship with mom and my sister shifted subtly. I wasn't ignoring them, but I was no longer bending to expectations that compromised who I was. Each interaction was a test, a reminder that love doesn't have to mean surrender, and slowly, I felt my sense of self return, solid and unshakable. The bonus, the promotion, the slap, they were all part of a larger story, a story that had hurt me deeply but had also shown me the strength I hadn't fully acknowledged. I learned that growth sometimes comes wrapped in pain, that standing up for yourself doesn't diminish love, and that life is too short to let pride and joy be stolen in the name of obligation. And so, I moved forward, not with resentment, not with bitterness, but with a clear heart, a steady mind, and a quiet pride in knowing that I had finally chosen myself. I could celebrate my victories, feel my achievements, and still love my family, just on terms that protected who I was. The night of that slap would always be a scar, but it became a scar I wore with awareness, a reminder that my worth was mine and mine alone.